Okay, good morning and welcome to this webinar organized in the framework of the Tempo project. Today we're gonna speak about value proposition and business model for new technology in low temperature district heating. My name is Gabriele Pesce and I will moderate today's webinar. I'm head of projects for Euroheat and Power, the European Association for District Heating and Cooling. So, as you know, low temperature district heating, it's one of the main trends for district heating. It's anyway a mainstream topic for the moment. And just one short note. Sorry, I have works home today. Was totally unexpected. So if you hear some background drilling, I'm really sorry for this, I'll say, unexpected problem. But anyway, I hope that you can hear me. So the webinar will last 1 hour and a half. So we're going to have three main presentations. The first one on the Tempo's value proposition for the technology developed in the project, presented by Markus Thürnbeck-Kiss, Group Product Manager at Thermaflex International. Then we're going to have a very interesting presentation on analysis made by Professor Chiara Candelise, Senior Research Fellow at Bocconi University, on the crowdfunding as a novel financial tool for district heating projects. And the third one, the difference between high and low temperature district heating, an analysis of 6 low temperature installation made by Kristina Lygnerud. I will say give the floor to the our panelists to give them the chance to present themselves, please. Markus, you can, Kristina, Markus, and
yeah, then
Chiara, you can.
I'm going to start.
Yeah, yes, please, Markus.
My name is Markus Thürnbeck-Kiss. I work for Thermaflex International Holding, and I'm the group product manager, and I'm responsible for product development and portfolio management. Thermaflex is a manufacturer of pre-insulated pipes and foam technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Markus. Chiara, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Chiara Candelise. I'm a researcher at Bocconi University in the Green Center, which is Center for Research. I have to look for it. Geography, Resources, Environment, Energy and Networks, and at Imperial College in London. I'm a founder also of Ecomill, which is the first equity crowdfunding platform in Italy dedicated to energy projects. And I'm going to be discussing and presenting a work I've done a couple of years ago now within the Tempo project on crowdfunding as an innovative financial tool to support district heating projects.
And my name is, sorry, yeah, I go ahead. And my name is Kristina Lygnerud. I have 3 hats. I am the Energy Department Manager at IVL, the Swedish Environment Research Institute. I am also Associate Professor in Industrial and Financial Economics, focused on business model innovation in district energy at Halmstad University. And I'm the chair at DHC+, the platform for district heating and cooling research in Europe. And I'm here to share some thoughts about the low temperature business model with you today.
Thank you, speakers. So we can start with the first presentation by Markus. He will present very quickly the Tempo projects, that just to give a context of today's webinar, and a brief presentation about the analysis and study on the value proposition for the technology being developed in Tempo. So please, Markus, the floor is yours.
So now some technical issues. So indeed, I'm now going to talk about first introduce short the Tempo project itself. and the innovations. And next to that, I'm also going to go into the value propositions for each product innovation. And at the end, I'm going to wrap up in a short summary. So the Tempo project itself, the name Tempo comes from temperature optimization. And the project itself is about technologies to reduce the system temperature in district heating networks. And of course, the results out of that, most of the participants here will know what the effect is of reducing the system temperature is, of course, the improvement of network efficiency, the cost competitiveness, but also to integrate other low temperature energy sources and sustainable sources. So when we look into the innovations with which we want to do that and to achieve the result, and what we are developing actually within the Tempo project, we are looking at three main categories. One is the network optimization by digitalization. Then the third is, the second is the optimization of the infrastructure. So that means in this case, the innovative pipe system. And the in-building optimization, so to optimize the buildings. When we go now into the innovations, so in total we have 6 innovations in these 3 categories. The first is this supervision ICT platform, how we call that. And this is mainly about detecting faults in the district substations. Of course, we know that and the majority or a big number of district heating substations work suboptimal, so not really efficient, and that results in a too high return temperature into the network. This is about a software technology to maintain that. The next one is the Utilization Tool. Of course, it's also it's nice to develop, of course, technologies and calculation routines and so on and so forth. But you also need to show that to the stakeholders and make it accessible. And that's the idea with the visualization tools. We are developing that for experts and non-expert users. That means it's actually about showing faults, for instance, for the of the substations, but also inform several stakeholders until the end user. And yeah, information is key in everything, I think. Then the third one in the digitalization optimization is the smart district heating network controller. And actually what we try to achieve here is reducing the return temperature by balancing the demands and coordinating that on network level. These were the digitalization optimizations, and then the infrastructure, so the pre-insulated piping system actually. And this is more about, not only about a product, a pipe product, it's more about the design concept actually, combined with, of course, multi-layer pipes. So with more pipes in one insulation package assembly. And it is about the combination of cooling, heating, possibly hot water supply in one network, and using, for instance, the same return temperature. And the concept itself, I think we explain in our more detail in our reports. The next one is the individual building optimization. So now we go more into the direct buildings and the connectors and the customers. And one thing we are developing is a interactive audit guide, actually, what makes easier and faster optimization of building installations, so the building installations itself. And the last but not least, is in the individual building optimization, is the decentralizing of buffers. Actually, usually you have more centralized or even only centralized buffers to cut peaks, actually. And by decentralizing the buffers, so more individual buffers, and also standardize these equipments, so combining it with control systems and so on and so forth, is what we do here in Tempo. And these decentralized buffers, of course, spread it over the network, help in cutting power peaks in the network more efficient. So these are the innovations we are working on, and how we do that and implement it in the Tempo project is we selected at the beginning of the project 3 application cases where we thought that covers the majority of networks in Europe, and one is the low temperature networks in urban areas. Then the second is the new low temperature networks in rural areas, so new applications, new projects. But we also look into existing district heating networks. This is the third application case. And what we did is we call it solution packages, where we combine several technologies what fit to these applications, to these low temperature networks, actually, and application cases. So when you look into that, you see here the innovations we've chosen. I show that in the next page a bit more detail. So this is also what we test within Tempo, and where our testings are based on. And then we go into the innovations, more into the innovations and the value propositions. Actually, what is a value proposition? The value proposition itself is actually with the value proposition, you look into the benefits of a product. So you have one value proposition by product, and the value proposition itself is actually a center, and that's why we've chosen that picture of our business cases. The value proposition is actually for a business model. And as I said, it shows the benefits. And we go later into the value propositions by product, actually, and means by innovation we develop within Tempo. So when we go to the next slide, here I show the approach we applied to come to these value propositions. First, initially, starting at the beginning of the project, we started a intensive stakeholder analysis, so that we identified the key stakeholders, what are relevant for these innovations, and then we went further with studies on investigating on the problems, the challenges, and the requirements these key stakeholders we identified have. And based on that, looking and having the innovations in the back of our mind, looking into and developing then actually the value propositions and the benefits of each innovation. In the next slide, that is actually the overall result of the exercise. Actually, is a decision matrix, because as I mentioned at the beginning or earlier in the presentation, we were looking at 3 application cases. Of course, you have more application cases than only these 3 in district heating, and furthermore, you also have sometimes differences in the business models of the business case, the application cases. So what we did is, at the beginning, we intended to develop the value propositions by solution package, and then we realized we have to separate it a little bit more in the innovations, because value propositions are for products or services. And this is exactly what you see here. This is the overview of all value propositions we developed. That means we have here again our 6 innovations we develop within Tempo. And on the left-hand side, you see the key stakeholders we identified for the relevant value propositions. So many of them come back in most of the value propositions. So the key stakeholders we see for these innovations are, of course, the developers. We described it very general. It's an area developer, domestic or commercial houses, and yeah, we call it developer or area developer. Who actually develop a area, and where one part of their things they have to look into is the energy supply concept, of course. Then the next is the municipality or municipality utilities. I think I don't need to explain that more. And the next one is the building owner itself, so the person or the company who owns the buildings. The next one is the software and system integrator provider. I think I have to explain that a little bit more. These are these stakeholders who implement or offer actually that software solutions, like the supervision platform and smart district control. But basically the whole software for district heating network, the software concept. The next one are we combined a bigger group. You will see that in the optimization of building installation value proposition. We saw that we have to look here at the broader stakeholder group than only just one, because they all have the similar interests in that. And then we have the network operator. I think I don't need to explain that more. And then we have the end consumer itself. So this is the decision matrix, and in the matrix, of course, you see which innovation has which stakeholder groups. So now we go more into the details, into the depth of the innovation. So I built it up by innovation. First, explaining again a bit more deeper the innovation and the features actually. And in the second page, always go into the value proposition itself. So what we did in at the beginning, I will explain that a bit more at the end of the presentation. For now, for the first report and for the first step, we said, okay, we combine all ICT technologies in one, and because most of the time it will be sold as one product, but later on we decided also to separate that, but that's for later. But now for these value propositions, actually we left them combined as one product, What we combine here are the network optimization, digitalization innovations. So that is on one hand the supervision ICT platform, where the feature is actually the detection of faults in substations. The next feature of the Vichy is the visualization tool, is the visualization, what happens actually in the network to actually show everything, all the faults, for instance, and the energy consumption, etc., etc. And next to that, the third is then the reduction of the return temperature by implementing the smart district heating network control. So we have three features here, actually, what we improve, show, demonstrate. This now you see here, the value proposition. I show that and summarized it on a very high level. More details I will share at the end of the presentation, the link to the report where you can see all the details actually. What you see here is the key stakeholders at the top. That is the network operator, the software system integrator, and the building owner. So these are the key stakeholders we see for this product actually and service. We start with the problems, and that is also how we did the exercise. We started at problems, challenges, and the requirements these main stakeholder groups have. And then we, based on analyses, discussions, but also the input from the monitoring seasons, we had already the feedback. So all feedback we collected, we show here the benefits for these stakeholder groups. So starting with the network operator, what these stakeholder groups are suffering is maybe a bit hard word, but the challenges they have and the problems and also requirements is the lack of reliability quite often, and the lack of profitability and sustainability next to that also it's also a matter of knowledge of the system, of course, to know what is happening in the system. And then next to that also the customer satisfaction, of course, because the network operator is the person closest to the customer. The benefits this product service has is actually you get at the end by detecting the faults and all the features I showed in the first slide. You have less customer complaints, of course. Efficiency usage of maintenance resources, because you know exactly where the problems happen and you don't need to send people senseless around and searching for issues, and that also leads to efficiency of usage of assets and fuels, actually energy, the return temperature reduction, and also the increased efficiency overall. Of course, you have more transparency by showing what is happening to different stakeholders. Next one is the software system integrator, the provider actually. What are the problems for these key stakeholder groups? On one hand is their challenge is to reduce human intervention actually. And the more easy integration of different building systems as well, but also they have to provide technologies. And select technologies. The benefits for this stakeholder group is of course by by knowing exactly what happens in the network, you know exactly where you need to go. So there is less human intervention, by also more automatization is less necessary. Then it is easier to integrate, of course, in buildings, and also scalability is easier. And of course, it is also well tested. That is something I have to explain a bit more, because or will explain more in the reports we have within Tempo, because the software tools we have are well tested already in former projects and also demonstrated. And then you have the building owner. What are the problems for these or challenges for these groups? On one hand, it's the high level of service delivery. For the building owner, yeah, they look at prices. It needs to be cheap and a competitive heat provision. And of course, they're looking for transparency. So the benefits of the technology or the product services we offer is actually less technician visits. You see that coming back and back in different ways, actually. For different stakeholder groups. And of course, the cost reduction is a topic, and that is something by improving the substations, the efficiency, reduced charges. Is there a result out of the optimization, of course. And yeah, no customer intervention. That's also quite important. We will see that a bit more in other, coming back in other value propositions. And actually, they want to see, and they see now with the visualization tool, they see what is happening in the network. So that was the network optimization, digitalization. Then we go into the innovative pipe systems. So as I said already at the beginning, it is about combination of design of a network, but also next to that combined with a multi-line pre-insulated pipe system. That leads at the end to a reduction of smaller trenches. So this is one feature. But also optimized design and reducing of dimensions itself. So when we look at the value proposition actually for that and the benefits for different stakeholders, we have here two groups, main groups identified. And this is on one hand the area of a developer who is actually developing the complete area. And the municipalities, and the problems and challenges, requirements the area developer has is, of course, they want to have the best value for money, for especially the energy, complete energy supply concept. Next to that also, for them is key the supply security, but also one issue they have is, of course, they want to have not avoid complexity. Let's put it that way. In the whole design. So the benefits what is offered with that product and service and is actually the reduction of the trench complexity. And increase the flexibility of therefore in the infrastructure. What we identified is that this is mainly relevant for rather smaller dimensions of pipes, so more in the subnetwork part. Then the municipality, for the municipalities, the biggest challenge is, of course, sustainable energy solutions. That is what they are looking for or have to look for. Two other topics are, of course, the fast installation. It needs to go fast. They don't want to have too much interruptions actually, and damages in the infrastructure. And also a topic is, of course, the high share of renewables, and especially for new areas. With this technology, the advantage is that if you have the challenge of multiple supplies, let's say you have cooling, heating, at the same time hot water supply in one, the advantage is here that you can use different energy sources and combine them in one concept actually, and that's the idea. And it can lead also into small trenches, but this is pretty much depending on the network, so it's really individual. As long as design is involved, we all know that it can lead to different solutions. Okay, then the next one is the decentralized buffers. Actually, as I explained already, it is about decentralizing the buffer concept, and what is here relevant is it is about standardization to develop a plug-and-play equipment. At one hand, what cut off actually peaks in the network more efficient. And I go into the details more now again, and the problems, challenges, requirements again for we have here two stakeholder groups. One is the municipalities again and the developer. Starting with the municipalities, of course, it is the cost for heat is interesting, what they have to supply to the customer, and the use of renewable energies again, and the reliability and supply security. So similar what we had already in the value proposition before. And of course, for the municipality at the end, lower overall capex and opex, so lower investments actually and operational expenses. That means at the end, by investing more in decentralizing buffers, you save actually money in the overall investment in smaller network pipe sizes, but also in lower, of course, energy supplies, CHPs or whatever. So you need actually small equipment. Then we have the developer. So here we call it a more general developer. Again, and the challenges here are low connection costs, of course, by houses. And of course, what is relevant for the developer, because he's looking at the overall picture, it's also the space required in the buildings. So and overall over the network, the space. And then the next part is next topic is the developer needs the complete energy supply concept again. So that's and of course it needs to be rather easy installed. That means the complexity we had in the previous slide actually. And then the benefits of the decentralized buffers, the innovation is actually you can, by standardization, you can easily connect the units actually. They're quite, these decentralized buffers are quite small, let's say. So you don't need that really big technical room for that. So you have just a rather small equipment. And of course, yeah, it allows as well at the same combining different energy sources, so also lower temperature sources. what is interesting for the supply can be interesting for the supply concept. And then last but not least, the optimization of the building installation. So here we have actually the features, as I said at the beginning. Again, it is about an audit guideline for the optimization of building installations, and the benefits or the features here are efficient support. With that, you offer efficient support in fault detection to understand actually, and identify at the same time also the corrective measures. And what is always the topic, of course, is it needs to be fast. So it speeds up the energy audits actually itself with less interruptions. So here we have again 3 stakeholder groups. The first, let's start with the first, where we put multiple stakeholders into one group, and here we had the network operator, the installer, the contractor, the designer, area developer, where at that stage of the report we saw they have similar interests and problems and challenges and requirements. So here it is about the increase the network efficiency, of course. That's the overall challenge. Then, of course, one challenge is for all these stakeholder groups, the accessibility to access actually the installations and inspect and optimize. And also you have the difficulty of the standardization, what is not really standard. Let's put it that way. And then the benefits we see with that technology or audit guidelines is we see actually quite high potential here, because the building installations itself have a quite huge impact on the network efficiency. So the benefit can be really big and in increase of efficiency, and by reducing return temperature, reducing operational costs by that, network flexibility, just naming some of them. But I assume most of the people here in that group know all the benefits. Then the end customer, for the end customer itself, of course, they are interested in comfort and low costs. That's the overall requirements actually. They are also not interested in the technology itself. Let's say the majority of the end customers are not. And of course, at the same time, they also lack knowledge, of course, and the ability to improve things. For this stakeholder group, we saw that the benefits is actually a possible cost reduction with motivation tariffs or something similar. And the benefits here, I added that, or we added that here is pretty much situation depending. And then we have the building owner. The building owner itself, so the company person who owns the buildings, they have the challenge of authorization to access, of course, to access the installations. And yeah, the interest here is, for instance, the high building value, so or higher rents. So because that's their main requirement actually. Or the benefits of the optimization of building installation and the audit guidelines is that it possibly leads to an increase of the building value itself. Okay, now we went through all the innovations and the benefits of the innovations for different stakeholder groups. I hope I could give you an very rough overview on and idea on the innovations, but also the benefits we see already for the innovations. And now I go to the short summary, of course. For us, the status and what we did so far is we have identified the key stakeholder groups where we still looking into optimization, of course, because value propositions to create value propositions for products and services, in this case, the innovations for Tempo, is of course an ongoing process. So because of changes in improvements in the development, but also outside changes and so on and so forth. Next to that, we identified, of course, the value propositions already by stakeholder groups for each innovation. And what we also realized is, and I mentioned that earlier, is that and that's why we separate now, and I will explain it a bit more in the next slide, is we saw that we have to do that by product, and it's pretty depending on the application case and but also the business cases where the innovations are applied. And for that, actually, I think we also share the presentation. If not, you find much more details, because what I gave you is just a very high level insight on everything. Of course, we have described all the value propositions and the benefits much more detailed in the report, and we uploaded that report. So these are public reports, actually public accessible. You find the deliverable, we call that in the Tempo project, deliverable 6.1 for value propositions for each solution package. You find that report actually on the website of the Tempo, and that is you find it in the presentations, but also in the invitations. And again, there you find much more details.
Yes, Markus, sorry. Yeah, the presentation will be available on the website.
Okay,
right after the webinar. So, and Markus, please, can you speed up a little bit more, because we are running out of time. We have other two presentations. So.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. So actually, I'm already at the end of the presentation, of course. And what are the next steps? Of course, we are continuing developing the innovations, and we have one more monitoring season to come, and other actions we do to come to improve and update actually the various propositions. And that report will also be then soon available, actually. On that I think will be available on April 2022, then on the web page as well. Okay, thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
I hand over back to you, Gabriele.
Yeah. Thank you, Markus, for this. Anyway, very interesting presentation. Of course, all the webinars going around, I'll say, the way to improve the replication of this kind of technology. And you gave us a very interesting analysis on the, I'll say, how to present the benefits from the deployment and potential replication of this technology in other networks, and that wants to reduce the temperature. I will very quickly go to Chiara. By the way, we're gonna have a short, say, question Q&A session right after all the presentation. So if you have any question for Markus, you will have the possibility to ask directly after Kristina's presentations. So Chiara, please tell us a little bit more about this very interesting and, let's say, quite unique studies on how to use the crowdfunding as an alternative financial scheme to support the deployment of district heating technology. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gabriele, for the introduction. Yes, as you said, it was a fairly new study that we did back in 2008, with the idea, as you said, of trying to understand how crowdfunding as an innovative and novel financial tool, and I'll say in a couple of minutes how novel was the tool in 2018, and how that tool could help district heating projects in particular in terms of funding them.
Do you have the possibility to change slides, Chiara?
Really, I mean, how could I?
Did you change it, or?
Let me see.
Now I can see a new slide.
Was it me changing it?
I hope.
Right.
Let's ask our technical background to give you the possibility to change.
Let me see. Because I cannot, so it would be nice if I could.
Okay, but Mama, maybe you can present the slide, and Teresa will give you the privilege to change slides.
Sorry, I didn't understand. So shall I? I cannot move, Gabriele. I'm sorry, I cannot move through slides. You can now. Okay, I can now. How can I do this? I mean, is it enter? It's just very slow. That's what I see.
Okay, maybe there is a little bit of lagging.
Of delay, yeah. Okay, so this is the first slide then. Okay, so the idea here. No, my God. Okay, let me.
Don't worry.
Let me go back to the previous slide. It takes like a few seconds. Yeah, let me just tune in this timing, and then I'll start the presentation accounting for this delay. What if I share my screen with the presentation myself?
I think it's if it's quick, yeah.
Shall we try?
Yeah, totally.
Let's see if that's the case. Right.
Let's pray for this technical bump.
Let me know if it's quicker, because sometimes what I see is not what people see. So do you see the presentation? Let me put it in.
Yeah, please put it in the presenter mode. It's a full screen.
Yeah. Looks like my computer is the one that is slow.
Okay.
Gabriele, I have a suggestion. Why don't we look for a different technical solution while Kristina presents?
Okay.
Yeah,
to speed up, thank you, Chiara. So
yeah,
to speed up the process, please, Kristina, take over, and the technical background will solve the problem with Chiara. Sorry, Kristina. So yes, let's switch presenter. Kristina will present a very interesting, example of potential business model for deployment of low temperature district heating. So. Okay, from the slow presentation to super quick presentation.
It seems to work now, or?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, let's stick, please, Kristina, start with your presentation, and then we'll give Chiara the possibility.
Then you are too far. Yeah, you have to back up.
Here.
Oh, this is mine.
Okay, perfect, great.
I think, yeah, it didn't quite look like that, but I think it's the first one. Can you just go to the next one so I see if it's
Please, Teresa.
Yeah.
Change slide.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for all this.
So go back again to the top. Great.
Please.
So yes, so thank you. I will then talk about the difference between high and low temperature district heating business models and the logics. And we will discuss a little bit economic gains from low temperature, the business model particularities, and a vision for low temperature 2050. Please change slide. Yes, and the data sources that I have used, yes, it was correct. It's mainly from a newly released handbook under the IEA DHC umbrella on how to make low temperature implementations. It was co-edited with Sven Werner and myself, and you can freely download it. And then also information comes from a future-oriented project called Business Models for District Heating 2050, which is ongoing. Next slide. Or am I supposed to manage the slides myself somehow?
I think you should have the privilege to change slides. Maybe
okay.
It could be.
Yeah, then I can try to do it myself then. Yeah. Yes, and also information is coming from a number of EU projects and ERANET projects. For example, the Reuse Heat project, where we focus on low temperature waste heat recovery, and I coordinate that one. We have waste heat from sewage water, hospital, data center, and metro. And then we have a follow-up in Reward Heat, also a Horizon project, where we have a number of standardized implementations of low temperature when we try to use standardized equipment with Reward Heat. Then we also have So What, which is a waste heat recovery project where you look at new greenfield investments and the risks you have when you invest in waste heat. That's industrial waste heat. And then we have FlexiSync, also looking into flexibility potentials in district heating systems. So all that I'm talking about comes from these sources. Now I try to change slides. Oh, and it worked too well.
Great.
And then the first point on the agenda was to discuss economic gains from low temperature. And when writing the handbook, we identified that cost savings are possible across the chain from heat supply to end usage because it enables a number of items like lower supply costs, distribution costs, and better integration of alternative heat sources. In the book, we highlight 9 economic aspects. For example, if you have the ability to use more geothermal, then you can extract more geothermal from wells when you have lower temperature systems. You will also use less electricity in heat pumps because there is a lower pressure applied in the heat pump condensers. You will be able to extract more industrial waste heat and obtain more heat from solar collectors. If you have a steam combined heat and power plant, you will be able to generate more electricity per unit of heat recycled. You will be able to recover more heat from flue gas condensation. The heat storage capacities will increase and the distribution losses will be lower. And also you will be able to use plastic pipes. And if you take all these 9 items and tick box them before you make your low temperature investment case, well, then you have got a good decision material. But often people tend to look at 1 or 2 of these points in isolation, and then you don't really see the economic impact that you could have from the lower temperatures in the systems. In the book, we made an interesting exercise, and it is that we looked into the cost reduction gradient, which describes the cost reduction per lower degree of Celsius for a reference volume of heat, and it's measured in euro per megawatt hour and degrees Celsius. And here in this table, you see a couple of heat sources, geothermal and waste heat, and the cost gradient for using them in a low temperature system compared to more conventional heat sources. For example, if you have a boiler or a CHP plant running on biomass or waste. And the main conclusion is that the low system temperature renders the largest cost savings if you combine them with renewable heat sources. And then, of course, the motivation to lower temperatures is low if you already have a boiler or CHP in place. But then one must remember that it comes as a package. You lower temperatures, and then the efficiency of using renewables is increased. But here we have some kind of a catch-22. If you have a system, what should you do first? Should you introduce renewables or should you lower temperatures? Well, it's not easy to identify what is the best way there. So those were some thoughts on the economic side of things. And then if we switch over to the business model and its particularities, I was happy to hear Markus explain about value proposition. And here in my slide, you find the same kind of tool. It's the business model canvas. And in the middle, you have the value that you offer to customers. On the right-hand side, you have the activities that you do together with customers to build a relationship, how you interact with them, what segments they are. And then on the other side, to the left-hand side, you have adjustments to make in terms of activities, but also resources and partnerships. And depending on what you do in all of these boxes, you generate costs and revenue, and those are the boxes at the bottom. So from a study made in the book, we investigated 6 low temperature implementations, and we identified that the value proposed is a green value. You can have a greener fuel mix in your system if you apply local heat sources. So the green solution is very pronounced. Also, you can have an active engagement with customers, which leads to long-term win-win relationships. And actually, customers that also produce heat, so-called prosumers, they can be key partners in this kind of business case. And probably you also need to invest in some kind of new resources like heat pumps to lift the temperature levels to what is appropriate for the system at hand, and also staff that can engage in activity with the customer and dialogue and have this long-term and strong relationship. So there are a number of conclusions to be drawn from that study. So the first one is very simple, but it is that the high temperature business case is different from the low temperature business case. In the high temperature business case, you have a business logic of central production and distribution and of lowering your marginal cost per unit of heat produced. Whereas in the low temperature business case, the logic is different. The logic is to make use of what is there locally and to really build this strong relationship with the customer, to emphasize the value of green and capitalize on those things. Then our second conclusion is that the low temperature offer could be complementary to the high temperature offer. So you kind of diversify your portfolio and the customer can choose if they want this more standardized or tailor-made product. And then a big learning from this study was that out of the 6 cases, all of them started with finding a technical solution. And then when the technical solution was there, they kind of realized, oh, we have to think about money too. And they just applied the conventional high temperature business model on the low temperature cases, which means that all of the advantages of the low temperature business case in its own right were lost. So those are 3 main conclusions. And then before you invest in low temperature installations, what is the customer asking for? That's a good question to ask yourself. Is it green heat, a local solution, an ability to impact the energy supply? How active do they want to be? Second thing to ask yourself, is there a long-term customer relationship that is possible? And does the customer want to collaborate to build this kind of local energy supply? What prosumers do you have? Oh, I did not touch anything. Interesting. Let me go back. What prosumers are in the area? Can you identify multiple of them and can you engage in long-term contracts? Identify what kind of investments you need. Do you need heat pumps? Do you have the right staff? Do you need someone who can build the system? And is an updated business model necessary. Maybe you can work with motivational tariffs or other. So the conclusion there is to think through what a low temperature solution will add to your context. Now we are in the right place. So now we have talked about economic benefits, we have talked about particularities of the business model, and we look a little bit into the crystal ball of the future. So in the future, probably we will have limited incineration. We will not incinerate fossil fuels, because if we do that, we completely failed all ambitions for climate mitigation. So let's assume we don't incinerate fossil fuels. Probably we will not incinerate things that come from the forest either, residue from the forest. Probably it has a nobler use. And then there will also, if we have achieved the goal of a circular economy, have limited waste to incinerate. So those are new preconditions for district energy in the future. And probably in the future, the district level is in focus, and waste heat recovery in these areas is increasingly important. Probably the distribution network is full of different heat sources, and you have different solutions for different districts. Some districts will be warmer, some will be cooler, and incineration might be here or there just for backup purposes. And the core of the business model might be distribution. So we are no longer so interested in our large boilers or plants, but it's more about delivering heat just on time when the customer needs it. So you have to be really good at storing and in shifting the demand and supply of heat. And there are a number of alternative heat sources that could be used in 2050. Probably deep geothermal is something, but how deep do you have to go? If you look into Sweden and the northern parts of Europe, you have to drill very far to go to temperatures that are sufficient. I have read about cases in undertaken in Malmö, for example, where they have drilled up to 5,000 kilometers. And then also in Finland, you have had to dig very far. So the question there is that a cost-efficient item? What volumes can we get? Of course, you can always use solar thermal also in the future. It's a well-tested complementarity to existing district heating schemes. But again, how much could you use and what would it cost? Probably waste heat recovery will become very important. We can no longer waste heat that is generated and just release it into the ambient air. We can't afford that in the future. I was in some discussions talking with the combined heat and power plants. What can they do in the future? And there are creative examples now in research projects in Sweden where you can start producing bio oils, for example, by adding a pyrolysis unit to your CHP plant. And that would all of a sudden mean that in the future, maybe a CHP plant does not only provide heat, maybe it also provides transportation fuels, who knows? And then there is also another project where a CHP plant was used. You harvested CO2 and actually built then a fuel for aeroplanes. So that could also be a future possible. But all these things we have to continue to understand from a probability. How cost efficient will it be? To what extent can we use it? Yes, and then concluding on the 2050 business model case, probably in the future, green heat is standard, so that will not be a possibility to charge a premium in any business model. And existing buildings are energy efficient and new ones are passive houses. And the energy company has become a partner where dialogue is key and end users contribute to the local heat supply. So low temperature district heating is kind of a future energy solution, but it's possible and ready already now. So the question is like, how ready are we to start using it? Yes, thank you for the attention. I tend to be a bit short and condensed, so maybe that fits with the overall time schedule here.
Yes, perfectly, Kristina. Thank you. We can always trust you, your presenter skill. Thank you. Yes, by the way, now we're gonna, I would say, go for the last presentation by Chiara. One small and very quick remark on question. You can have two options to ask question to the speakers. So you can insert your question in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or if you are not shy, you can raise your hand and speak out right after Chiara's presentation. So please, Chiara, let's try to share your screen.
Right, so I changed computer, let's see, and I changed PDF, changed presentation mode. Okay, let me see. Please tell me if you see my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, so I'll start the presentation then. So, okay, so I gave already an introduction of what we are talking about. So let's start.
Sorry, Chiara, can you try to enlarge a little bit in a full mode screen, because it's a little bit little, I don't know. There's another way to present it in a full screen mode. Otherwise, okay, fine, don't worry, go on.
Well, not, I see it full screen. What if I do this?
It's safe, but don't worry, you know, go on. Otherwise, we don't have any time to have questions.
Okay. Right. Okay. So what is crowdfunding? Just a quick reminder for people that that maybe don't know much about it. So it's an alternative finance tool, which allows, basically there are web dedicated platforms where project developers can publicize a project to be financed and raise the funding directly from the public, directly on the platform. So the interesting part of the tool, apart from the fact that it's a finance tool, is the fact that it can create engagement and communication around those projects and create the community of potential donors or investors for those projects. So technically that can happen also because crowdfunding platforms are online platforms and they're strongly linked to social network and digital communication. For people that use them, it's a way to get to know a project that they're gonna fund or give money to in general, and they can choose where they put their money without intermediation and with full transparency. There are different crowdfunding models. The crowdfunding in general has developed since 2008, late 2008, 2009. So it is fairly new financing tool. That's why we call it an alternative finance tool, and has been developing over time in different models, which can be grouped in two major groups. Those that are non-financial, so there are crowdfunding platforms where people basically donate or give money to a project or to support a cause, and the financial or investing crowdfunding, which is declined into different main ways, is the equity crowdfunding, where investor, because in this case we have investors, so we have people give money to get some monetary returns back. The equity one are crowdfunding platforms where people buy shares of companies, and the lending platforms are platforms where people can lend money to projects. This is roughly the different crowdfunding models. So let's talk about the use of crowdfunding in the energy sector. When we did this study, it was 2018, and at that time I had finished a review of the use of crowdfunding in the energy sector, which basically was based on gathering data on projects that have been financed through crowdfunding platforms dedicated to energy projects, mainly in Europe, because the sector was very new. The first platforms dedicated to energy appeared in 2012. The first one was in the UK. So we're talking about a very new and financing tool for the energy sector. In the energy sector, the crowdfunding model used are the financial ones, so either lending or equity. And what you see here in the graph is the growth of funding volume and the number of projects funded over the period 2012-2017. The data are aggregated for 2 years because of data some challenges we had in data gathering. What you see here in the last bar is the total in 2017. So then over 300,000 300 million euros have been raised to fund energy projects for a number of over 800 energy projects, mainly across Europe. So we're talking about, I don't remember exactly, but back then there were roughly 20 platforms dedicated explicitly only to energy projects. Just to give an idea of how the sector has kept growing over time since then, I couldn't do a full review of the sector, but what I show here is how one specific platform in France, the platform Lendosphere, has been growing since then. So as you can see, there has been the growth. It has kept. I mean, the sector, at least this platform, has kept growing over time since 2017. So just to remind ourselves where we are, we all know what I'm going to show in a second. So we are all in energy transitions where we are moving from large scale production generation of electricity, as you can see in this picture, to this and this and this. So we are moving toward an energy sector where we have distributed generation. So we have smaller and more modular energy projects implemented. The generation gets closer to the point of consumption. We all know about the new term that it's not new anymore, of prosumer. So the energy market is now open to the entry of new players. So not just large firms, but also small firms like ESCOs, local authorities, and even citizens can become energy producers. And in this context, we have seen the birth of, in the last decade, I would say, in particular, of energy communities. So energy communities are, let's say, business models for deployment of energy projects where citizens engage and invest in the energy projects, and in some way, therefore, harvest the benefits of these clean energy investments. And they contribute to CO2 emission reductions and to the energy transition in general. The role of citizens in energy project development applies also to investments in district heating systems. We know that, well, the data I present here again are from back to 2018, but in 2018, over 430 Danish district heating systems, out of over 430 Danish district heating systems, 340 were operated by cooperatives, cooperatives of citizens, in addition to district heating systems municipally owned. So here in the district heating system, we already see a presence of smaller players like citizens, and we see a role for local authorities and municipalities in promoting and financing those investments. The review, these are the data that comes from the review again back in 2017. But what we can see is that these are the technologies that have been funded through crowdfunding. So the technologies of the projects that have been funded through crowdfunding. What we see is a strong focus on renewables and more mature technologies like wind and solar PV are those that are prevailing. What we see here are the proportions, the percentage of total funding volume per technology. But I think it's interesting, or at least was interesting back in 2018 to see that in the last years, there has been a progressive differentiation of technologies funded by crowdfunding projects. If you see here, for example, for United Kingdom, which was one of the most active crowdfunding energy markets. What you see here in the last column, you see more colors. So you don't see just the two blues, which are solar PV and wind, but you see also other technologies funded through crowdfunding, in particular geothermal, or there has been a huge project on tidal funded through crowdfunding. We're talking about something like £1 million funded through a crowdfunding project for tidal. So why crowdfunding in this context? So for the developers of projects, crowdfunding is for sure an additional source of funding. So can help in access to capital. Back then there was a little bit of study based on survey among project developers, and they expressed that using crowdfunding was in some cases easier and quicker access to finance, and in some cases also cheaper access to finance than traditional finance. But what is really interesting of crowdfunding as an innovative financing tool is the fact that it can allow engagement. So can allow access to a wider audience of potential investors, first of all, can increase the visibility of the project, and therefore increase the local content of the project by communicating the project to the local communities and engage the local communities, including the local public authorities. In some way, in this way, could reduce potential NIMBYism against this new infrastructure development. It is a way of redistributing revenues in the territories that are affected by the project. And in some way can reduce the planning risk, because of course an increased local involvement can open, let's say, can allow an easier planning process to go through. From the investor's point of view, again, back then there was some results of incentives or motivation to invest from investors in energy projects through crowdfunding platforms. And what you can see here is the ranking of the main motivation to invest from those people. And it's interesting to see that the first motivation is transparency. So people like to invest through crowdfunding platforms because they can see where their money goes. And of course, the second one is the expected rate of return, because of course, from these projects, people can earn money, and it's a financial tool basically. And then sustainability impact and so on. So again, the sustainability element is relevant, is important, as we've seen. All the projects funded through crowdfunding are renewable energy projects. So there is a strong connection between the use of crowdfunding in the energy sector and the energy transition in general. So the last two slides are let's say the summary of the analysis we've done within this research, this project. And as we said at the beginning, was really the first time that we tried to see how crowdfunding as an innovative financial tool could help district heating investments and projects and investments. So what we did was, first of all, highlighting or understanding what were the major challenges for district heating investments, and and for each of them, see how crowdfunding could help. So what you see here in this table is, on the left, we have the challenges, on the right, how crowdfunding could help. And I divided this in two sections. So the access to finance potential of crowdfunding, and we will see later on the engagement side of the use of crowdfunding. So in terms of access to finance, district heating some can have challenges in accessing finance, in particular small to medium projects. And in this context, crowdfunding can provide access to finance, can provide an additional tool, an additional way to access capital. Of course, as we said before, potentially in two different ways. With the equity model, could allow to raise equity, the equity that could make more easier than to access bank loans to project developers, or could support cooperative expansion, because allowing members to join cooperatives which are behind district heating development and deployment, or the lending model by providing additional sources of debt. Another challenge for district heating is that they tend to be projects with low to medium internal rate of returns. So they tend to have more difficulties in raising private capital, but they are projects that have wide social environmental benefits, and they are relevant for the territory. So crowdfunding potentially could help in, let's say, raising more patient capital, and by that we mean a capital that have lower expectation in terms of immediate or high returns, because is a capital that knows that is looking also for other type of benefits coming out of the investment, in particular in this case, or benefits in terms of social, environmental, and territorial positive impacts. So in terms of public engagement, then I wonder if you see properly. Okay, so challenges for district heating. Sometimes there is lack of awareness and potentially negative perceptions of district heating from the community, the territory, and the potential customers. So in this case, crowdfunding could increase the local awareness and reduce these negative perceptions, because it's a tool, as we said at the beginning, that could allow in increasing the opportunity, could increase the opportunities of communicating the project in all its economics, social, and environmental benefits for the territory in particular. Another challenge is the energy demand risk. Investors in district heating have a risk which is connected to the fact that you need a minimum number of guaranteed customers to be connected to the district heating network in order to make the investment sustainable. Crowdfunding, if used during project development, could help in guaranteeing a minimum number of connections, because you engage citizens and potential customers to be connected to the district heating network at the beginning, let's say, of your development process. So again, engagement could help in minimizing energy demand risk. District heating projects could benefit from economies of scales. This is more in general for energy projects, but economies of scale in district heating are achieved, of course, with increasing the number of connections to reduce the overall costs. Again, crowdfunding could help in increasing public awareness, acceptance, and in some way, customer connections. Another issue for district heating is potential NIMBYism, and as we said at the beginning, crowdfunding could help in that sense. First of all, because it allows a redistribution of economic returns coming out of the project that affects the territory among the citizens that are in the territory. So there is an element of redistribution. It can help in creating a local community around the projects if the project is well communicated, and again through the communication that the crowdfunding allows to. Oh, sorry. Platform, the crowdfunding platform allows to put in place. And finally, the planning risk. In some cases, there might be challenges in the relationships between the private developers and the local authorities. Crowdfunding, as we said before, besides raising capital, is a tool of local engagement. So it's a tool for finally for communicating the project, allowing revenues redistribution on the territory, and therefore creating potentially a local community around the project. And all this could help in the relationships with the local authorities and potentially in reducing the planning risk. And with this, I've finished, and I thank you for that, for inviting me to present this very interesting work we did a couple of years ago. And I'm available for any question, and the report is available online. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristina. Sorry, Chiara.
No worries.
So
stop sharing. Yeah.
Yeah. So we should have running out of time, but if you have questions, we can stay 10 minutes more just to give the possibility to ask some questions. For example, we have just one from Alessandro Capretti, a question for Kristina. Kristina, how important is to have a roadmap for the decarbonization of our sector, especially for existing systems? For Alessandro's opinion, nowadays it is essential to stay on the market. Did you get the question?
I think I got the question. Working a lot with cities now, and I realized that the city has one ambition, and often the energy company has thought about something else, and maybe they are not fully aligned. So I think there is a big need to align the city goals and the district energy company goals. That's one item where I think a roadmap is very important. And then, of course, in order to make an efficient transition, it's always good to have a plan. So I would say it's probably basic and much needed. Yes, I would say that. But that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Kristina. Alessandro, I hope you are satisfied. I have another very quick question to Kristina. You said that many district heating companies applies the business model fitting for high temperature district heating instead of using new business model for low temperature district heating. Why there is this approach, this behavior? How we can change it?
Well, I think it's because you tend to think about technology first, and then when technology works, you think, oh, we also have to make this work financially, and we don't want to make the customer see any changes in what our price is. And then the very easy thing to do is to just apply the same business model. But as I said in the presentation, the drawback then is that you don't really harvest all the gains that you could if you had two different offers.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. So we have another question for Ertan. Question for all. So please decide who wants to reply. So in 2050, low temperature business model, energy companies are partners. However, in crowdfunding, they don't seem have key roles. Is there something that I am missing, or energy companies' role is not clear in the future low energy business? So maybe Chiara, you can start, as we are speaking about crowdfunding, and also Kristina, Markus, you can intervene. Do you want to repeat the question, or can you...
Yes, please.
So in 2050, low temperature business model and energy companies are partners. It's not very clear here. However, it seems that in crowdfunding, they don't have a key role. So these energy
They don't have a key role.
Yeah.
Who?
Energy companies. It's not clear in future low energy business models. So, you know, maybe if I can interpret this question, I think that for Ertan, we speak about crowdfunding from, I would say, individual investor crowding, I would say, private investments in a crowdfunding platform, I don't know, tool to vehicle this kind of investment. But energy companies are in some way excluded in this process.
Right.
Why, or it's not true? Maybe
well,
yeah.
Yeah, let me see if I could. I don't have slides that I I wouldn't say that energy companies are excluded, if that's the question. I would say rather the opposite. I was looking for additional slide, which I don't have, which in reality presents again back in 2017, who are the main proponents of projects funded through crowdfunding. And even if crowdfunding at the beginning, or the application of crowdfunding to the energy sector has started from with the idea of funding projects that are promoted very much bottom up, so promoted by let's say the territory in general. Results again already in 2017 have shown that a huge majority of the projects funded through crowdfunding are proposed by companies, so ESCOs, so energy companies. So in that sense, from the project development point of view, there is already in the crowdfunding for energy sector, there is already a strong role for energy companies. On the other hand, in terms of if the question meant the role of energy companies as investors, then in reality, on crowdfunding platforms, potentially, I mean, the crowdfunding platforms are regulated so that individuals can invest, but also, let's say, legal entities. So crowdfunding on energy projects could also be used to engage in the investments actors along the supply chain of the energy project itself. And that means also companies. I'm not sure I replied to the question, but.
Thank you, Chiara. Kristina, do you want to add anything, or do you agree?
Yeah, I just have one comment. So we see more and more also investor-led finance, right? So in some cases, investors come and they do the investment in building the network and the entity, and then they manage they have a management team that they establish and they operate this for the first 3 years maybe, and then they make an exit. So I think in the future, the boundaries between who does what might change a little bit, and maybe the investor also takes a more active role. And then the company kind of takes over after it has been established or so. But yeah, that could also be a trend.
Okay, thank you. Markus, which will be the next step for the value proposition development? And Markus, are you there? Can you please switch on your camera?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
very quickly, just to give the audience a quick update on value proposition analysis and how it could be useful for potential replicators. And then we can wrap up the webinar.
Actually, the next steps are we are going to make one survey, and of course the monitoring season is ongoing, and after that we put all the things together and finalize the report actually, and I would rather refer to the report, deliverable 6.5 it will be, than to already give a sneak peek. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We stayed quite in time. Sorry for all the technical bumps we had. If there are no any further questions from the audience, and the panelist doesn't want to, say, add anything, I would like to thank you for listening. I know that these 2 years of pandemics make us a little bit fed up of all the, I would say, Zoom meeting, but I hope you find anyway interesting these webinars, one of the last one of them. We are gonna wait for you at the Tempo final event in March. We're gonna get more updates in the coming month. Basically, will be quite a hybrid event in March, hoping that the situation will improve. So we're gonna wait there quite gladly. So thank you. Have a nice rest of the day. Thank you, Kristina. Thank you, Chiara. Thank you, Markus, for being our panelists today. And yes, have a great Christmas break too.